Last night I saw this post by American author Derek Thompson where he suggested that the USA had entered a phase of democratic decline known as late kakistocracy, where in his words, the regime starts running out of people who will work for it, and so the folks who aren't qualified for their current positions are promoted to even larger positions for which they are even more unqualified. Kakistocracy is a word I hadn't heard since university, but reading it last night sent a shiver down my spine because I realised with horror that he's right. Trump's America is sliding into kakistocracy. Now, the word comes from the Greek kakistos, which kind of means like worse, and kratos, which means rule or power. And it literally means a government run by the least qualified or the most incompetent or the most unscrupulous people imaginable within that society. Political scientists have noticed that as a regime becomes less popular and begins facing obstacles to their agenda, they often become more paranoid and more fanatical. The most important positions within the apparatus of the state then become exclusively staffed by loyalists, dogmatic ideologues, or someone who can sell the leader's virtues rather than experts that can provide fearless and frank advice. Trump has placed a Fox News host in charge of the US military. A medical conspiracy theorist is now in charge of the Department of Health. His personal lawyer is the US Attorney General. He placed Dr. Oz in charge of Medicaid. He made an MTV host the Secretary of Transportation. Last year, he nominated this random Australian pro-Trump Twitter user who refers to himself as the alpha male to be the US ambassador to Malaysia. Now, every cabinet position in the federal government mandates absolute loyalty and humiliating performative grovelling and soliloquies of devotion. These are the most senior civil servants in the country. They are meant to be independent experts chosen by the president to run the government because of their qualifications. But in this administration, loyalty to Trump matters more than any credentials. As a result, institutions inevitably weaken, infrastructure degrades as priorities shift to quick political wins, budgets blow out, economic time bombs start to tick, and the ability of a nation to respond to a crisis is eroded. It means that the state itself becomes less stable and more vulnerable to its adversaries. It even makes it more expensive for the government to borrow money and more expensive for it to pay its debts. Now, for months, the bond market has been staging a quiet revolt, forcing the US government to pay ever higher interest rates as investors grow increasingly nervous about inflation, deficits, and the sheer amount of debt being issued to governments. Now, bond markets are fascinating, and there are countless experts who can explain them far better than I can, but in its simplest terms, a higher interest rate on US bond occurs because those that are normally buying them either believe that inflation is going to climb higher than the interest rate being offered, or because they see a real risk of the US defaulting on their debts. This is a huge warning sign from an industry that spends billions trying to understand the true state of affairs in the world and to predict the future. And right now, they're nervous, which is why we should be paying close attention to the US Federal Reserve, the only remaining truly independent department within the federal government right now. Now, despite several comments threatening his removal, Trump never fired the Fed chair Jerome Powell because the law is fairly clear that he can't, not without cause. Powell openly defied Trump's public demands to lower interest rates on several occasions, noting fears of inflation caused by Trump's tariffs, poor jobs growth, and his war with Iran. As a result, Powell has kind of been our only reliable source of truth from within the US federal government, the only government expert that we could believe was fearlessly calling it as he saw it. Now, remember when the Bureau of Labor Statistics released a weak jobs report showing slower than expected employment growth? Trump fired the Commissioner of Labor Statistics. There is no tolerance for bad news from this administration, but he couldn't force Powell to bend at the knee. Jerome Powell's 4-year term as Fed chair expired on the 15th of May. His replacement, nominated by Trump and confirmed by the Senate, is a man named Kevin Warsh. He's neither a career economist nor a typical central banker, but he did serve as a Federal Reserve governor between 2006 and 2011, meaning he was there during the GFC. Having previously worked for Morgan Stanley, he's seen as more closely connected to Wall Street than some previous Fed chairs. But he has qualifications. It's really important to acknowledge that fact, even if those qualifications are not those traditionally expected from a Fed chair. But what isn't known is whether he will remain truly independent. Can he resist Trump's public pressure campaigns? Will he make unpopular decisions to confront a looming economic calamity that is already spooking the market? We don't know yet, but considering how important his role will be in protecting the global economy from a sovereign debt crisis that will impact every economy in the world, he might be the most important man in America right now. Maybe even the world. So, how will history remember him? As a defiant hero or a complicit coward? The fate of billions depends on how that is answered.